Dawn spills over the rooftops of the village, illuminating bamboo groves with a pale, trembling light. A young warrior sits cross-legged on the wooden floor of a small dojo, eyes half closed, breath shallow, mind drifting through idle thoughts. His hands rest on his knees, yet they feel heavy, as if weighted by invisible chains. Talent flows through his body. He moves well, strikes with accuracy, yet his spirit remains clouded. Each action is mechanical, unanchored, lacking the sharpness born of presence. Laziness, subtle and insidious, has hollowed his energy, leaving precision without purpose. The mentor enters, footsteps silent but unmistakable in their authority. An austere figure, his presence radiates calm power, eyes sharp, voice steady. "You move well," he says, "but your spirit sleeps. Your mind wanders while your body acts. Talent without discipline is like a sword dulled by neglect." The words land like stones in the quiet room, sinking deep. The warrior feels a mixture of resistance and curiosity. Ego bristles at critique, yet something awakens, a recognition that his potential is muted by inertia. The mentor begins with observation rather than correction. The warrior performs basic stances, strikes, and footwork. Each movement is competent, yet lacks intent. Precision is present, but awareness is absent. The mentor points to subtle flaws: a gaze too soft, a breath uneven, a motion incomplete. "Discipline is not punishment," he instructs. "It is the forge in which spirit and skill converge. Laziness is not merely rest. It is a quiet thief, stealing clarity and strength from each moment you neglect." The warrior struggles to absorb the lesson. Years of sporadic effort have created bursts of brilliance, but the Kaizen Path, the path of continuous incremental improvement, is foreign, almost tedious. The mentor demonstrates a series of small, deliberate movements, repeated until each becomes instinctive, each gesture precise. "Greatness is not found in sudden leaps," he explains, "but in the patient accumulation of small victories. One step, repeated without fail, reshapes mind, body, and spirit." Observation turns to gentle challenge. The mentor places the warrior in simple exercises designed to reveal mental wandering. A repetitive kata, each movement repeated hundreds of times, each strike measured, each stance exact. The warrior's mind rebels. Frustration rises. He questions the monotony, the lack of immediate results. Yet, with each repetition, he begins to sense subtle shifts. Muscles awaken to precise motion. The body anticipates movement, and attention starts to anchor to the present. By midday, the warrior notices a faint clarity he has not felt before. The haze of thought thins, and focus begins to sharpen. Even small successes, a stance held perfectly, a strike landing with precision, generate a quiet sense of accomplishment. The mentor nods, silently affirming progress, but does not relent. "Talent is nothing," he reminds, "without the relentless refinement of effort. Laziness dies only in the consistent, deliberate choices that define each day." The first lesson settles. The mind and spirit are the true battlefield, and small, disciplined action is the weapon. The warrior feels the first stirrings of awakening, the recognition that skill alone is insufficient, that the Kaizen path demands patience, attention, and repeated effort, shaping excellence from the mundane. Transition toward Part 2. The warrior has glimpsed the cost of neglect and the promise of incremental effort. Now begins the journey of disciplined repetition, where the invisible work of daily refinement will forge strength from stagnation. Afternoon settles over the village, warm sunlight filtering through the bamboo slats of the dojo. The warrior continues his repetitions, each movement deliberate, yet his mind still drifts. The mentor observes silently, allowing the struggle to surface. Laziness is subtle. It hides behind competence, whispering that effort is optional. Every time the warrior pauses or falters, the mentor's gaze reminds him. Awareness must anchor every action. The exercises intensify. Simple strikes are performed hundreds of times, footwork repeated until muscles burn and joints protest. The warrior begins to notice patterns. Small mistakes that previously escaped attention now stand starkly in his mind. Frustration threatens to overwhelm, but the mentor's guidance is steady. The mind resists effort, he says, because it clings to comfort. Growth lies in the accumulation of precise, unglamorous acts. The warrior realizes that excellence is not sudden. It is a quiet, invisible force, built from repetition and attention. Meditation punctuates the physical labor. Sitting cross-legged, eyes closed, the warrior watches thoughts arise without judgment. Regret, desire, distraction, they all surface. Laziness attempts to anchor itself in familiar excuses. Fatigue, lack of inspiration, fear of failure. Yet he practices noticing, returning attention to breath, posture, and the subtle energy within. Each cycle strengthens focus, revealing that presence is cultivated, not given. The warrior senses that mastery over the self begins here, in awareness of the mind's own inertia. By evening, small victories accumulate. A stance held perfectly for several breaths, a strike executed with full intention, a mental drift noticed and corrected. These are the hidden achievements of the Kaizen Path. They are quiet, almost imperceptible, yet their effect is undeniable. Laziness recedes, replaced by a subtle energy, a rhythm of deliberate action. The warrior feels the first hint of internal authority, the recognition that effort, however small, compounds into strength. The mentor finally addresses him. You have begun to see the cost of inaction and the power of discipline. Talent may grant opportunity, but only consistent. Refinement transforms potential into capability. Mental laziness is subtle, patient, relentless, but so too is the warrior who chooses presence and effort each day. The path is long, and each step, though small, matters. Night falls, shadows stretching across the dojo. The warrior sits in quiet reflection, understanding that the Kaizen Path is not about brilliance in a single act, but about the accumulation of countless purposeful actions. For the first time, he senses the edge of true mastery, not in outward recognition, but in the quiet command of self. Transition to Chapter 2. With awareness awakened and the cost of laziness recognized, the warrior is ready to embrace the discipline of small steps, where incremental action will transform effort into unshakable strength. The morning sun rises pale and steady over the village, illuminating the dojo where the warrior now stands with a renewed focus. The air is crisp, carrying the faint scent of dew-soaked bamboo. Today, the mentor introduces him to the core principle of the Kaizen Path. Transformation is built not in leaps, but in the accumulation of small, deliberate actions. Each movement, each breath, each choice is an opportunity to refine mind, body, and spirit. The warrior's task begins simply: repetition of basic forms, stance transitions, and mindful footwork. Yet there is a subtle, almost imperceptible difference. Each repetition is performed with conscious attention. No gesture is rushed, no breath is neglected. Initially, monotony gnaws at him. his mind protests. This is too small, too insignificant. How can such simplicity lead to mastery? The mentor responds with quiet certainty. The smallest step, repeated without fail, reshapes the warrior as surely as the river carves stone. Through the morning, the warrior begins to notice subtle shifts. The hand that once trembled now steadies. The gaze that wandered now holds focus. Even thought itself feels sharper, more precise. Each repetition, no matter how small, becomes a thread in a fabric of awareness. Pain and fatigue appear as inevitable companions, yet they are no longer enemies. They are indicators of attention, markers showing where presence falters and where refinement is needed. The mentor observes closely, adjusting posture, guiding breath, and correcting alignment. Every micro-movement is significant. The warrior comes to understand that the Kaizen Path is a system of compound improvement, the cumulative effect of thousands of small intentional acts. Excellence is built quietly, invisibly, in moments that no one witnesses, yet their impact resonates in every strike, every stance, every breath. The first meditation session punctuates the morning training. Sitting cross-legged, eyes closed, the warrior focuses on breath and bodily sensation. Distractions arise, regret for past failures, worry for future trials, but he returns to the present with each exhalation. Through silent repetition of attention, he begins to see how mental laziness manifests: procrastination, doubt, impulsivity. Awareness alone is not enough. Deliberate correction is necessary. Each moment of noticing becomes a small victory against inertia. By midday, frustration gives way to subtle satisfaction. Small improvements accumulate into visible change. Stance becomes grounded. Strikes become purposeful. Mind becomes more present. The mentor nods approvingly, but says nothing, allowing the lesson to settle silently. The warrior begins to feel the rhythm of incremental mastery, the pulse of disciplined effort moving through body, mind, and spirit. Transition toward Part 2. As the day progresses, the warrior will learn to integrate these micro-actions into sustained patterns, discovering that the relentless discipline of small steps builds not just skill, but resilience, focus, and the quiet strength that shatters mental laziness. Afternoon deepens, and the dojo hums with quiet intensity. The warrior continues, each movement performed with deliberate attention. Repetition is no longer a chore. It becomes a vehicle for presence. The muscles learn subtle precision, the breath establishes rhythm, and the mind finds clarity in the monotony. Even small deviations are noticed, an elbow slightly off, a footstep too heavy, and corrected with care. The Kaizen Path teaches that these micro-adjustments, compounded over time, form the bedrock of mastery. The mentor introduces reflection as part of practice. After each sequence, the warrior pauses to assess. Where did the mind wander? Where did energy slacken? Where did pride or impatience intrude? Each observation becomes actionable insight, guiding the next repetition. Mental laziness, once hidden in distraction and inattention, is now exposed. He begins to see how small, consistent effort strengthens not just the body, but cognition and resolve. Awareness and action are inseparable. Each sharpens the other. Through these incremental steps, subtle transformations emerge. The hand that wavered now steadies instinctively. The gaze that drifted now anchors to intent. Breath synchronizes with motion. Thought and body, once disconnected, begin to move as one. What was once laborious becomes habitual, yet precise, effortless, yet conscious. In this integration, the warrior senses the invisible accumulation of power, a strength not measured in grand gestures, but in the quiet, relentless refinement of countless small victories. Pain and fatigue, ever-present companions, are reframed. They are no longer deterrents, but signals of growth, markers highlighting areas where attention and discipline are required. Laziness, previously a constant undertow, recedes in the face of consistent, deliberate effort. The warrior begins to feel the rhythm of Kaizen, not as restriction, but as liberation, the freedom that comes from mastery over mind, body, and impulse. As evening falls, the mentor speaks, voice calm yet firm. Every master was once a beginner, every great achievement once a small, deliberate step. Strength accumulates silently, unseen, but its effects are undeniable. The path is simple, yet relentless. To conquer laziness, to sharpen spirit, you must persist in the small daily actions. In them lies the foundation of mastery. The warrior sits in quiet reflection, absorbing the weight and promise of these words. He understands that transformation is not immediate. It is incremental, patient, and relentless. Each day, each repetition, each micro-action is an opportunity to refine focus, discipline, and presence. The Kaizen Path does not reward impatience, only persistence. Transition to Chapter 3. With the rhythm of small, deliberate actions established, the warrior is now ready to confront the mind's shadows, distraction, procrastination, and fear, and convert resistance into conscious, disciplined action. Morning light filters through the bamboo groves, painting the dojo floor with long, golden stripes. The warrior sits cross-legged, eyes closed, hands resting lightly on knees, but his mind is restless. Months of disciplined repetition have sharpened his body and attention, yet the true battlefield remains, the mind itself. Today, the mentor introduces a new trial: confrontation with mental resistance, the hidden shadows of distraction, procrastination, and fear that have long governed his actions. The first exercise is silent meditation, extended beyond the warrior's previous limits. Thoughts surge. Worry about failure, recollections of past mistakes, fantasies of shortcuts to mastery. Each idea is a subtle attempt to evade discomfort, a whisper from laziness. The mentor's instruction is simple: observe without judgment, return to breath, posture, and sensation. Awareness alone is insufficient. He must act deliberately against inertia. Every time the mind drifts, every time fear tempts hesitation, he brings himself back, sharpening presence like a blade against stone. Next comes controlled challenge. The mentor sets tasks that require sustained attention and mental endurance. Intricate kata repeated hundreds of times, complex sequences performed under fatigue, physical exercises paired with mental recitation of principles. Discomfort arises quickly: pain in muscles, heat from exertion, and the mind's urge to give up converge in a test of will. Here, laziness shows itself most clearly, not in laziness of body, but in avoidance of effort, in seeking the easy, the familiar, the comforting. The warrior begins to see patterns. Fear is not simply a single moment of panic. It is a persistent undercurrent, arising whenever the mind anticipates difficulty. Laziness is not idleness alone. It is a subtle resistance, the quiet pull toward inaction, distraction, or resignation. Ego magnifies both, presenting excuses. You are tired, unprepared, not ready. But the mentor guides him, quietly insisting, your mind invents obstacles to avoid growth. Confront them, and your spirit will rise. Through repeated cycles of meditation and controlled challenge, the warrior experiences small victories. A lapse of attention is noticed and corrected. A fearful thought is acknowledged and released. Each confrontation with resistance strengthens not just mental endurance, but awareness, presence, and self-command. The shadows of the mind become less opaque, more instructive, revealing where effort must be directed and where discipline must be reinforced. By midday, the warrior senses a subtle shift. Mental laziness, once pervasive, now falters in the face of deliberate observation. Fear becomes a signal rather than a barrier, alerting him to areas requiring focus. Distraction is recognized, not indulged. Through this daily confrontation, the mind learns to obey and the spirit begins to align with purpose. Transition toward Part 2. As the day progresses, the mentor will push the warrior deeper, forcing him to confront the most entrenched habits of avoidance and fear, transforming resistance into deliberate, conscious action. Afternoon stretches long and still over the village. The warrior continues, guided by the mentor's quiet authority, confronting the most subtle forms of resistance. This is no longer physical training alone. The battlefield is mental. Every wandering thought, every impulse to cut corners, every flicker of frustration is now noticed and addressed. The Kaizen Path has prepared him for repetition, but here repetition merges with reflection, each corrective action reinforcing presence, each conscious choice dissolving the grip of mental inertia. The mentor introduces controlled exercises designed to amplify resistance, tasks slightly beyond skill, sequences repeated under fatigue, meditation combined with focused movement. Each challenge surfaces fear. Fear of failure, fear of inadequacy, fear of confronting discomfort. Laziness, once a hidden undercurrent, rises in full view, whispering rationalizations and seeking distraction. Yet the warrior no longer yields. He observes, adjusts, repeats, and persists, turning resistance itself into a tool for sharpening focus. Pain and doubt, far from enemies, become markers of growth. As the hours pass, patterns solidify. The warrior notices the subtle interplay between thought and action, between hesitation and execution. Mind, body, and spirit begin to align. Presence strengthens. Decision becomes deliberate rather than reactive. Ego, once a disruptive force, is recognized as a signal. Moments of pride or impatience reveal where discipline must deepen. With each confrontation, mental laziness diminishes, replaced by deliberate engagement and conscious choice. By evening, the warrior experiences a profound clarity. Actions are no longer automatic. Each motion carries intention. Thoughts, once scattered, are disciplined. Fear is acknowledged but controlled. Distractions are observed but do not dictate action. Incremental mastery of the mind has begun, transforming hesitation into focus, inaction into purposeful effort. The shadows that once governed him now illuminate the path forward, showing precisely where attention, patience, and discipline must be applied. The mentor finally speaks, voice calm, measured, resonant. The mind is the battlefield, and resistance is its terrain. Laziness and fear are not conquered with force, but with awareness, presence, and relentless action. Each moment you observe, each hesitation you overcome, you claim a small victory. These victories accumulate until mastery emerges, not as spectacle, but as alignment of thought, action, and spirit. The warrior bows, sweat cooling on his skin, and recognizes the depth of the lesson. Mental laziness, once pervasive, has been weakened. Fear, once immobilizing, now guides rather than commands. Conscious presence has become a tool, sharpening each action and thought. He feels the first real power of self-mastery, subtle, invisible, and unshakable. Transition to Chapter 4. With the mind's shadows confronted and resisted, the warrior now enters the forge of repetition, where disciplined, relentless practice will solidify skill, presence, and internal strength. Dawn arrives pale and thin, casting long shadows across the dojo floor. The warrior rises, muscles stiff but spirit alert, ready for the day's unyielding regimen. The mentor's gaze is steady, unflinching. "Today," he says, "you enter the forge. Repetition is not mere habit. It is the fire in which mastery is forged. Every motion, every breath, every thought is a hammer striking the steel of your spirit." The first exercises begin simply: stances, strikes, footwork, each performed hundreds of times. Yet the challenge is not complexity, it is persistence. The warrior's muscles ache, joints protest, mind murmurs excuses. Laziness and fatigue rise like waves, tempting him to falter. But he recalls the lessons of incremental discipline. Each small, deliberate action compounds, invisible yet irreversible. Presence becomes a shield, awareness a weapon against the mind's resistance. The mentor introduces layered repetition. A simple strike becomes a sequence. A stance is held under fatigue. Breathing aligns with motion. Attention merges with action. The monotony is deliberate. In each repetition, small errors become magnified. The slightest misalignment, the tiniest lapse of focus. The warrior corrects and repeats. Pain transforms from hindrance to indicator, fatigue from burden to teacher. The Kaizen Path is clear. Mastery grows in the invisible, incremental refinements that others overlook. Meditation punctuates physical labor. Sitting cross-legged, the warrior observes the mind as it reacts to strain. Discomfort, frustration, pride, impatience all surface as opportunities for awareness. Every distraction corrected, every thought redirected, strengthens not just focus, but resilience. Laziness, once a silent thief, is dismantled piece by piece. The warrior begins to experience the rhythm of deliberate action, a pulse of effort, reflection, adjustment, and renewal. By midday, subtle transformations appear. Movements flow with a quiet efficiency, breath aligns with motion, mind and body integrate. The warrior's presence is no longer fractured. Each action arises from intention rather than habit. Even the smallest motions carry weight, precision, and purpose. The mentor watches, silent but satisfied, knowing that the unseen work of repetition is forging an invisible strength, one that will manifest in clarity, composure, and unshakable command. The day's labor continues into the afternoon, each repetition reinforcing not just skill, but patience, attention, and humility. The warrior feels a growing inner rhythm, an unbroken thread of presence that links movement, thought, and breath. Laziness fades further, replaced by an energy that is steady, disciplined, and resilient. The forge of repetition is relentless, yet the warrior begins to understand its quiet power. Excellence is invisible, yet absolute in effect. Transition toward Part 2. As the day deepens, the warrior will move from visible mastery of technique to the integration of body, mind, and spirit, discovering the profound transformation that emerges from relentless, disciplined repetition. Afternoon sun casts a golden glow through the dojo windows, illuminating the warrior's movements as he continues the unbroken cycle of repetition. Each strike, each stance, each shift of weight becomes a meditation in motion. What once was mechanical begins to carry intention. What once was effortful now flows with quiet efficiency. The Kaizen Path transforms the mundane into the extraordinary. Discipline molds every moment into a building block of mastery. The mentor increases the challenge. Sequences grow longer, footwork more intricate, movements performed under mounting fatigue. Mental resistance surfaces again. Doubt, frustration, the impulse to shortcut or falter. But the warrior meets each thought with observation, each temptation with deliberate correction. Every failure is instructive. Every small success reinforces presence. Pain is no longer an enemy, but a teacher signaling where focus wanes, where adjustment is required. Through repetition, the warrior begins to sense alignment between body, mind, and spirit. Breath synchronizes with motion, attention merges with action, and awareness extends beyond self to encompass the space, the weapon, the flow of energy. Laziness has been chipped away, leaving a steady, unshakable rhythm of purpose. Each movement carries precision, each decision reflects intention, and each thought resonates with clarity. Evening brings reflection. The warrior sits in stillness, observing the subtle shifts within. Where fatigue once dictated action, discipline now governs. Where distraction once fractured thought, presence now prevails. He recognizes that mastery is not a display for others, but an internal architecture of resilience, focus, and self-command. The relentless repetition of the day has forged invisible strength, the kind that manifests in composure, clarity, and unyielding readiness for any challenge. The mentor finally speaks, voice calm yet weighty. The forge is complete only when the warrior no longer fights repetition, but moves through it as life itself. Mastery is built not in spectacle, but in the silent accumulation of effort, where body, mind, and spirit converge. Laziness dies in the rhythm of deliberate action, and strength arises unseen, unassailable. The warrior bows, understanding the magnitude of the lesson. Through repetition, patience, and disciplined presence, his spirit has been tempered. He moves with quiet authority, his mind sharpened, his body responsive, his awareness constant. The forge has transformed him, laziness shattered, discipline internalized, mastery emerging from the relentless cadence of effort. Transition to Chapter 5. With strength and presence solidified, the warrior is now prepared to face the mirror of ego, confronting pride, attachment, and illusion to integrate all he has learned into a coherent, fearless spirit. The first light of dawn stretches across the dojo, illuminating dust motes suspended in the air. The warrior, muscles still humming from the previous day's forge, faces a new trial. Today, the battle is internal. The mentor, his presence calm yet unyielding, introduces the most subtle and dangerous opponent, the ego. Pride, attachment, and the desire for immediate results have long masked weakness and disguised laziness. The Kaizen Path now demands that the warrior confront them directly. The warrior begins with reflection. He examines past actions, noting where impatience guided decisions, where pride inflated his perception of skill, and where attachment to results clouded judgment. The mirror is both literal and metaphorical. He observes his movements, his expressions, and his thoughts. Each insight reveals a distortion, a point where the self has deceived itself. The mentor's guidance is firm but patient. Strength without humility is brittle. Mastery without awareness is hollow. Confront what you cannot see, and only then will the spirit rise. Sparring exercises are introduced as a tool for ego confrontation. Against opponents of equal or superior skill, the warrior is forced to face failure, missteps, and frustration. Each loss is a mirror reflecting arrogance, haste, or attachment to being right. Every victory is examined for traces of pride or overconfidence. Slowly, the warrior begins to understand that external outcomes are secondary. The true measure of growth lies in internal alignment, presence, and self-mastery. Reflection and meditation punctuate physical training. Sitting cross-legged, the warrior observes the mind's reactions: shame, defensiveness, self-doubt, and fleeting pride. With each observation, he learns to detach, seeing ego as a tool rather than a master. Laziness, once physical and mental, is revealed as the ego's companion, feeding off distraction, impatience, and self-deception. Awareness alone is insufficient. Deliberate practice in presence, humility, and restraint is required. By midday, the warrior experiences moments of clarity. Movements once clouded by haste now carry intention. Decisions previously reactive now arise from focus and discernment. The mind, previously fragmented by pride and impatience, begins to coalesce around purpose. Ego, far from vanquished, is recognized and managed. Laziness, rooted in self-deception, is diminished. The warrior senses that mastery is less about conquering the world and more about mastering oneself, aligning action, thought, and spirit in harmony. Transition toward Part 2. As the day deepens, the mentor will push the warrior further, forcing him to integrate lessons of ego, presence, and discipline into seamless action, forging the final layer of self-mastery. Afternoon settles over the dojo, warm and still. The warrior, now familiar with physical exertion and mental focus, turns inward to face the subtleties of ego. The mentor challenges him with exercises that magnify self-awareness, sparring with relentless precision, executing complex sequences under scrutiny, and performing tasks where minor errors are magnified. Each moment reveals pride, impatience, or attachment. The warrior confronts these reflections with deliberate attention, learning to act from presence rather than reaction. Failures sting sharply, yet the warrior no longer recoils. Each misstep becomes a teacher. Ego, which once whispered excuses and inflated self-importance, is now acknowledged without surrender. Pride softens into humility, attachment into discernment, and desire for immediate results into patience. Laziness, previously intertwined with these distortions, is weakened further by conscious effort and disciplined reflection. The mind, once scattered by internal illusions, begins to consolidate around awareness and intention. Through repeated confrontation, integration occurs. Lessons from silence, repetition, and fear merge with newfound ego awareness. Movements flow with composure, decision-making aligns with clarity, and the spirit feels unshakable. External victories lose significance. Internal mastery becomes the measure of progress. Presence deepens into instinctive action, awareness into effortless execution, and discipline into a steady current guiding every choice. The mentor observes silently, approving the transformation without words. At last, he speaks. The warrior who conquers ego walks unbound. Strength arises from understanding, presence from humility, mastery from alignment. Laziness is shattered not by force, but by clarity and relentless effort. What remains is a spirit capable of deliberate, fearless action. The warrior bows, absorbing the weight of the lesson. Ego is no longer master, but instrument. Laziness has been dismantled through discipline and reflection. Presence and focus are fully integrated. He feels the first true embodiment of the Kaizen Path. Strength not flaunted, but steady. Mastery not proclaimed, but lived. Transition to Chapter 6. With ego tempered and presence complete, the warrior now steps into real-world challenges, applying the Kaizen Path to action and witnessing mastery manifest fully in mind, body, and spirit. Dawn rises over the village, pale light spilling through misted bamboo, signaling the beginning of a new test. The warrior stands alone, muscles warmed, mind sharpened, spirit steady. The journey through repetition, confrontation, and ego has prepared him, but now he faces the true trial, applying the Kaizen Path in action. Here, mastery is no longer measured in isolated drills or introspection. It is tested in real movement, decision, and consequence. The mentor's instructions are sparse, deliberate. Let each action arise from presence. Let each choice flow from discipline. Let fear and doubt serve as guides, not chains. The warrior nods, understanding that every gesture, every breath, every step is now a reflection of his inner transformation. Even the simplest tasks, walking, shifting stance, adjusting grip, are performed with intention, each micro-movement precise, each motion aligned with purpose. The path is not spectacle, but integration. The Kaizen philosophy brought fully into lived experience. He begins with a series of practical challenges, complex sequences combining movement, strategy, and mental focus. Endurance exercises requiring both physical stamina and calm decision-making, and tasks demanding patience and observation. Distraction arises as it always does. Internal chatter, fatigue, frustration. But this time, the warrior meets it with calm awareness. Laziness no longer tempts him. Fear signals rather than stops. Ego observes without control. Action flows from conscious presence, not reaction. Each moment becomes a microcosm of the Kaizen Path. Small adjustments, correcting posture, refining balance, recalibrating focus, accumulate silently into visible results. The warrior notices subtle improvements, quicker reflexes, steadier breathing, a mind capable of navigating uncertainty with calm precision. The lessons of prior chapters, incremental discipline, confrontation with fear, repeated refinement, and ego mastery interweave seamlessly. Presence, discipline, and awareness are no longer abstract ideals. They are lived, embodied, and inseparable from each motion. By midday, the warrior experiences a sense of alignment rarely felt before. Thought, body, and spirit move in harmony. Each challenge is met not with anxiety or strain, but with deliberate execution and calm observation. The Kaizen Path, once a concept, now manifests as a rhythm, a steady, unbroken flow of conscious action, discipline, and adaptability. Mastery, he realizes, is not about proving skill, but living it consistently, moment by moment, choice by choice. Transition toward Part 2. As the day progresses, the warrior will face a culminating challenge, testing the integration of all his learning and revealing the full depth of his transformation on the Kaizen Path. Afternoon descends, softening the light but sharpening the sense of purpose within the dojo. The warrior now confronts a final sequence, a simulation of real-world challenge where movement, thought, and decision converge. No shortcuts are allowed, no indulgence of ego or hesitation permitted. Each action must arise from presence, each decision from discipline, each breath from awareness. This is the culmination of the Kaizen Path, transformation tested, mastery revealed. The exercises are rigorous, timed sequences of strikes and defenses, endurance tests under mental and physical strain, and complex problem-solving scenarios requiring observation and rapid adjustment. At first, fatigue tempts him. Whispers of laziness tug at the edges of focus. Yet he no longer resists through force. He meets resistance with deliberate calm, letting presence guide action. Fear surfaces only to inform, not control. Ego remains a quiet observer, neither inflated nor diminished, its distortions corrected instantly through conscious alignment. With each repetition, the warrior notices a profound shift. Movements flow instinctively, yet deliberately. Choices are decisive, yet mindful. Awareness pervades even the subtlest moments. Where before hesitation or doubt might have dominated, now clarity and purpose prevail. The culmination of months of Kaizen practice, incremental discipline, repetition, confrontation with fear and ego mastery, manifests as effortless control. Laziness has been eradicated, replaced by steady, conscious effort. As the final exercise ends, the mentor steps forward, silent until now, and simply nods. No words are needed. The warrior, sweat cooling on his skin, chest rising and falling steadily, recognizes the truth of the journey. Mastery is not an event, not a victory over others, but the internal alignment of mind, body, and spirit. The Kaizen Path has transformed him, not through grand gestures, but through relentless incremental effort and disciplined presence. The warrior steps outside into the early evening, the forest and village bathed in golden light. Each step carries intention. Each breath is deliberate. Each movement, whether mundane or demanding, embodies the lessons of the path. He understands that mastery is not static. It is a living practice, a lifelong rhythm of presence, attention, and action. Laziness, once a shadow over the mind, has been shattered. Fear, once a restraining chain, is now a guide. Ego is balanced, a tool for refinement, not obstruction. Closing line? Lesson. The Kaizen Path does not create extraordinary feats overnight. It transforms the ordinary into disciplined mastery, forging a spirit that moves with unshakable clarity, relentless presence, and enduring strength.